Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kim Garner, and I'm a financial advisor at Libertas Wealth Management Group. And I have the pleasure of welcoming you today to Happily Divorced in the 4 C's of Collaborative Co-Parenting. Just a couple housekeeping items before we get started today. First, this virtual event is being recorded, and all those who registered will be receiving the link tomorrow with the full video, just in case you'd like to rewatch it at a later date, or if you'd like to share it with your friends and family. Secondly, as we move along through the presentation, please feel free to type any questions that you have in the Q&A section by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your window. For the sake of privacy and confidentiality, we'll answer all of them anonymously at the very end, and we'll continue taking questions until the last question is asked. So that's it with housekeeping. Let's move ahead with introductions. First, I'd like to introduce our very own Adam Koós, Senior Financial Advisor, Portfolio Manager, and President at Libertas Wealth Management Group. With a focus on financial planning, retirement, tax, and estate planning for 20 years, he's been helping individuals, couples, and business owners make work optional. And we'll be hearing from Adam on the topic of financial tips before, during, and after a divorce. Secondly, I'd like to introduce our first speaker this evening. Teresa Harlow has been a co-parent for over 20 years and has written 2 books on the topic of co-parenting, Happily Divorced and Combative to Collaborative, the Co-Parenting Code. She has worked in the corporate setting for 30 years, helping individuals and teams achieve goals they thought impossible. Her mission is to help others transform combative relationships in their life into collaborative ones, using both the golden rule and empathy. Please welcome Teresa Harlow.
I'm Teresa Harlow, and I am your co-parenting champion. Yes. I don't know why every time I say that, it makes me do that, but I do, and I just go with it. So I'm very happy that you joined us here today. And I thought, this is a heavy topic. Let's lighten it up a little bit with a little bit of a comedy to start it off with the video, albeit about co-parents that really did struggle. And if you're here today because you're a co-parent struggling or some other party that's affected by divorce, I'm so glad you made the choice to be here today. And I hope that my little get up here makes you smile for a minute. With that, you heard a little bit about us, and now we want to find out just a little bit about you. So we've got a couple poll questions, and I'm going to flash the first one up here now. It should come up right in the middle of your Zoom screen. So just pick the answer that best suits you. You could actually probably say yes to 2 of these, but pick the one that brought you here today. Please select the, tell us about who or which role you are in the co-parenting relationship. Okay, got a couple people, great. All right, we'll give it just another couple seconds. Make sure everybody gets to weigh in. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. And to share the results with you, we've got a mix of divorced and separated parents, single parents, and children or other family members. So I'm glad that you've all decided to come here today. So let's take a look at the next poll. I'll bring that up for you. How long has it been since the divorce or separation? And you'll just pick how long it's been. Okay, everybody's weighing in. All right, so we've got a good mix. I'm glad, because no matter whether this is new for you or something you've been doing for a while, this should be a valuable session for you. And I know you took time out of your personal life to do this. So with that, I'll share those results. I don't think I did that. And you can see it's 25% across the board. And with the third question, it's going to be a little bit different. So let me bring up my PowerPoint deck, because this is an open text sort of question. So I'm just going to ask you to type in your response to the chat. And just a reminder, the chat is completely anonymous, so you don't have to worry about anybody knowing who you are in today's presentation. So what is your biggest divorce or co-parenting challenge? What brought you here today? And just go ahead and type your answer in the chat. And what we'll do with that information is hopefully we answer why you came here. We give you some ideas inside of the presentation, but if not, we'll have a Q&A that's also going to be anonymous at the end, and we can maybe handle a few of these there. And also, if we don't address your need, we will leave you our contact information that you can reach out to us after the presentation, after this webinar later on. Okay, we're getting a couple responses in. Coexisting with all the adults involved. Amen to that. There's a lot of schedules to coordinate. I'll tell you, try to take a family vacation. Wanting to find ways to work together even though houses run differently. Co-parenting from different counties. Okay, I almost said countries. All right. So think about that. When we get to the Q&A, of course, you have an opportunity to weigh in there as well. And with that, let's talk about how you move from combative to collaborative as a co-parent. So my ex-husband and I divorced in 1999, and we were instantly collaborative. And I'll tell you what, I need to move myself up here because I find this a little fun and also sort of creepy in a way, because I'm going to be looking right at you because I like that. So we started off completely collaborative from the very beginning, as I was saying. Not seriously. Does any divorced couple start off collaborative? That by definition would violate divorce in general. So no, we were combative just like any other co-parenting couple. So how did we get there? We started off as a family and a married couple that was fighting about everything, including the weather, how to play cards. God forbid our friends put us on a friendly game of volleyball on the same team because they would live to regret it. So how did we get to puppy dogs and rainbows? Well, we wanted to get there, but we had no idea how to treat each other. Obviously, we'd failed at that. So I reverted back to a place where I was young to think about what I could do to solve this problem, because my ex-husband, or to-be ex-husband at that point, says to me, Teresa, you're going to miss half of his life. And it hadn't occurred to me that I needed to solve that problem. I was focused more on how I was going to enhance my life, frankly. And so I thought, well, I don't know how to treat him. I don't know how to treat him. What can I do? And it occurred to me something that my mom told me when I was young, and that was treat others the way you want to be treated. And you know what? I started with that, and it was rather magical. From that moment, I built on that. Is that enough? Well, I'll tell you, it wasn't everything, but it laid the foundation. And then once we had a foundational principle, an overarching guidepost, if you will, it was much easier to lay the roadmap out to actually collaborate as co-parents. So I've captured here the 4 C's of collaborative co-parenting, and it's in a diamond shape, not by accident. There are 4 C's to diamond quality, and there are 4 C's to collaborative co-parenting. Choose, create, cultivate, and correct. And let's start with choose. What am I asking you to do? What am I asking you to choose? Am I asking you to get along with your ex? You think you can do that? Of course you can't. You've already decided to divorce. That is not going to happen. So I'm not asking you to choose if you are going to get along with your ex. I'm asking you to choose to be a good parent. Commit to and focus on being a good parent. Can you do that? You were going to do that anyway. You're already doing that. So great job. You're on your way. And guess what? Your other parent is probably planning to do that as well. This is going to get easier. Once you decide to focus on being a good parent, it makes all of the rest of your choices easier. You can intentionally decide what to say to the other person, how to say it, and what you think about that other person. You'll be able to treat them the way you want to be treated. You'll choose to be empathetic. Charles Eisenstein, an author recently on Oprah Winfrey's Super Soul Sunday show that airs on Sundays, says empathy is being able to look at another person and say, what is it like to be you? Place yourself in that person's shoes, theoretically. Now you've taken treat others the way you want to be treated to a whole new level. Now you're putting that concept in the context of that person. See how it works? It makes being kind something that will automatically follow. You can easily choose to be kind to someone who's committed to and focused on not necessarily getting along with you, but on what you both have decided you want, to be a good parent. You'll choose to be open-minded. Meaning, well, let's see, you probably either grew up in a home where the two parents stayed together and you don't have a frame of reference there, or maybe your parents divorced and they were combative. If you're here today, you might not have had a good role model. So now that you've chosen, you actually have an opportunity. Now look, most people don't plan to fail. They fail to plan. What's that mean? Well, you've got your choice, but how do you get from there to actually doing it? Lay out your roadmap. We're going to decide on succeeding, because we didn't get up today and say, hey, I'm going to suck at work, or that test I'm getting ready to take, I plan to get an F. No, people don't do that. They plan to succeed. So let's plan to succeed. Simple, right? Now, we chose to be good parents. And now we're going to create a plan that enables us to actually do that. Your plan will include communication, parenting time, living arrangement, and finances. And let me tell you, if you're here today and you've been a co-parent for a while, you may be saying to me, Teresa, look, I've already done all of this and it's maybe still not working for you. Well, I have good news, because you can revisit it. It might need brushed off and updated. Lives change, circumstances change. If it's not working, let's pull it back out and look at, how did you commit to communicating with each other? In what ways, how frequently, and in what circumstances did you say you would communicate? And are you both doing that? How are you dividing up your parenting time? Did you decide to do 50-50, or are you doing some of the breakdown? Do you have sole custody? And are you affording your co-parent the opportunity to have their visitation? Which, by the way, I hate that word. It really reminds me of hospitals and prisons, not the time a child would spend with a parent. But I digress. Your living arrangement, if it's working for you, great. If it's not, people have gotten far more inventive than they used to with co-parent living arrangements. It used to be that you had one home that the family all lived in together. And when the family split up, they called it a broken home, and two more homes were established and the child goes back and forth between the two. Now, I would say that's probably still pretty typical, but some other options include duplexes or twin singles, living across the street, living upstairs and downstairs if it's an apartment scenario. There are all kinds of ways people are making life easier on themselves by establishing residents that are much more conducive to going back and forth for the child and for all the stuff that goes with that child. So living arrangements, I'll say one other living arrangement that is pretty neat. We did it as a temporary scenario when we were actually selling our joint home. And that is where the child stays in one home. It's called bird nesting, if I didn't say that already. The child stays in one home and the parents go elsewhere on their alternating schedule. And that way the child stays in one location and the parents take on the burden of moving back and forth. Maybe they have an apartment that they share and go in and out of on alternating basis, 2 separate homes if they have the means to do that outside the family home. And you might need to consult someone like Adam to make that happen in your finances. Speaking of finances, I'm going to leave that primarily to him. The only thing I'll say there is my ex and I didn't establish a formal plan for our finances through the court system. We did it on our own, separate from the courts, and only just had a cursory statement in our agreement that said we would split everything 50-50. Now, if you have an old plan, or maybe you never got around to a plan, or maybe you just didn't formalize it or talk about it, there are a lot of great tools now that you can use to help make this easier. We've got a whole bunch of apps listed over here on the left side of your screen. And the first one's pretty cool. It's called our Family Wizard. Now, all of these apps give you the opportunity to communicate inside of them using messaging and email type of communication with your co-parent. There's also a calendar typically provided. And that way the communication is captured. Well, with our Family Wizard, they go a step further and they actually monitor the tone of the communication that you are typing, so that if you start to insert words that may create a negative response on the other end, it can alert you to say, hey, you might want to consider revising that. And so I thought that was pretty cool, because sometimes we don't think about the tone that we're implying. And on the other end, someone goes, wow, that was complete sarcasm and you never even intended it. And now you've got a whole mess on your hands. Close is a free app. So if you don't want to pay a fee, that's one that you can go that way. Two houses actually allows for more than just the 2 co-parents to be engaged in the communication. So if you've got a step parent that you want to include in that thread, if you have a second spouse or ex-spouse that you're coordinating your co-parenting with. A lot of great tools. You can also use the free Google apps that are all available out here. We use the spreadsheet to track our finances and reconcile back and forth through the years, or a simple old calendar on a handwritten calendar. Just make sure that you share it with each other. Okay, so you've chosen to be a good parent, right? And you've created a plan to succeed. But wait, are we there? No, a plan without action is not a plan. It's a speech. And that's what we're doing here today. So we do have to take it a step further and actually live the plan now. You're going to cultivate your relationship by keeping the commitments you made in that co-parenting plan. If you said you would communicate on a certain frequency in a certain way, make sure you do that and hold each other accountable to that. Ask, hey, where is my communication on this if you don't get one? Be consistent. If you agreed to a week-to-week co-parenting schedule, don't agree to go out of town for work on your week with the child. You will need to make some particular choices with your career and whatnot to make sure that you can keep your highest commitment to your family. But that doesn't mean there shouldn't be some flexibility. If your ex's parents come in town suddenly and they want to see their grandchild, are you going to say no? Because if you do that and then later on you want to take the child with you to see something that pops up special, you might not get that cooperation if you haven't afforded it to your co-parent. So it's a reciprocal world that you can just create this positive feedback loop between the two of you by establishing that trust. but flexibility should be reserved for the rare exception. Finally, we talked about being kind and how much easier it would be once you chose to be good parents. Acts of kindness are simple. They're not big things. It could be something like your child said something funny and you text your ex to let them know what they said. Or you snap a picture of them riding their bike for the first time. Since they couldn't be there, that connects them more to that child and gives them the opportunity to feel more engaged with them. And in the end, it makes them a better parent. Finally, you've chosen to be a good co-parent. You've chosen to be a good parent, period. You've created your plan to succeed, and you've been living the plan, yet things are still not right. Either they weren't ever right, you never were on course, or somewhere, excuse me, somewhere along the way, things got off track. Maybe a new person came onto the scene, a step parent, another family member. So what do? Well, I'm going to tell you a little story. I've been in the same relationship for 13 years. And from the very beginning, my fiance's ex-wife and I never got along. Their kids were 7 and 10 at the time we started seeing each other. And so now they're in their 20s. And because we never got along, I stepped back from really engaging in that relationship very much. And I lost valuable time and connection with those children because I couldn't confront it. I couldn't really think about how to solve the problem with her or fix that relationship. And so fast forward 10 years, we're 10 years into this relationship. So about 3 years ago, and my stepdaughter comes into the house and she puts down a Easter basket on my counter. And I ask her, "Oh, what's that?" And she says, "Well, Mom sent this home with me. She said she had an extra from giving them out to the girls because my stepdaughter played college lacrosse. And she said to bring it to you." I said, "Oh, that was nice." And I thought, wow, maybe there's a glimmer of hope here. We can have an opportunity. And so I thought, well, I should call her and thank her, but calling, that's really intimidating. Maybe I can start with a text. So I texted and I said, "Hey, thank you for thinking of me and sending the Easter basket home with Madison. And I really appreciate it. I think it was a nice thing to do for the team." And she said, "You know what? Thank you." This was all in text, by the way. She says, "Thank you very much for telling me that. I really needed to hear it because one of the other moms got really upset about it and got up in my face." And I'm like typing back and forth with her. And I'm like, "Got in your face? What happened?" And she says, "Well, she actually told me it was way over the top and asked me if I wanted to take it outside." And I'm like, "Take it outside? Are we talking about, this is 45, 50-year-old women here. And she's going to go redneck on her and take her out in the parking lot, I guess." Well, I saw an opportunity to inject some humor here, which I thought could really go a long way. And I took a shot. I said, "Well, thinking about the fact she was a college athlete as well." I said, "Could you take her?" And this was all in text, but so I'm giving you a little drama here as I play out the whole scenario. But she responded with a big laugh and LOL. And we joked about that back and forth. And that was a moment that everything started to change. 2 weeks later, we actually had another moment where their son got into a game for the first time on the varsity team in high school. And it was unfortunate because she couldn't be there. It was great for him. And we're taking pictures and I'm like, "Where is her mom? Where is his mom?" And I was told she couldn't be there. She got called out of town for work unexpectedly. And this was unexpected. So she missed it. And I thought, what would someone want me to do for them? What would someone want? What would I want? I'm saying this all wrong. What would I want someone to do for me if I were mom and not there? Well, I decided to send her the pictures. From that moment on, everything changed. Those two events, and I want you to stop and think about that. There's two things there to learn. One, it's never too late. We were 10 years into this. Two, stop trying to fix your relationship, whether it's with your ex or with another party. It's not required. It would be nice to forgive another person or get an apology or give an apology. Those are things you should do if you feel compelled to do them. But if they don't happen, it doesn't disqualify you from choosing to be a good parent or be a collaborative co-parent. So just move on. When you decide to move on, initiate that connection. Even if you think the other person should do it first, you choose to do it. It's never too late, and it will allow you to move forward. So in summary, you're going to choose to treat others as you want to be treated. Choose to be a good parent. Create your plan to succeed. Cultivate that plan by living it. Execute the plan and correct course when things get off track. It is never too late. If you liked what you heard here today and you want more help, Happily Divorced is a book that's currently available. It's mine. It's out on Amazon. You can get it right now. Coming soon is my new book, Combative to Collaborative, the Co-Parenting Code. Happily Divorced is more of a memoir. It's our story of how we succeeded at co-parenting, whereas Combative to Collaborative goes deeper and contrasts the combative behaviors and tells you how to move from that to a collaborative place. And then also I do custom co-parent planning. So if you need help, I can walk the journey with you. Finally, just like I'm doing here today with you guys, I speak on the topic of collaborative co-parenting and also the broader topic of moving from combative to collaborative relationships. And I do that for all types of teams, customer groups, and what have you. I really appreciate your attention. And now I'm going to turn it back to Kim.
Thank you so much, Teresa. There was a lot of great information, and I'm excited to hear what questions everyone's going to have later. Next, I'd like to reintroduce our final speaker for today. He's presented more than 200 educational events to thousands of people in Central Ohio over the course of the last 2 decades. He's a certified financial planner, a chartered market technician, a certified market technician through the International Federation for Technical Analysts, and he started his career just 10 days before the World Trade Center attack, making the early part of his career no less than interesting. With a deep passion for financial planning, he always says that he hasn't worked in 20 years, with the goal of helping clients make work optional someday while treating everyone we work with like an extended personal family member. Please welcome Adam Koós.
This virtual world we're living in is certainly interesting, and if you have any financial questions as I go through this, I just want to prepare you in advance. There's so much to talk about, and honestly, we could turn just this portion of the presentation easily into a 1 to 2 hour workshop. So I want to warn you in advance that I'm going to go through this material pretty quickly because I'm more interested in you getting the information in its entirety than I am in teasing you with headlines and bullet points. So I'm going to try and get through as much as I possibly can here. I am going to talk pretty fast. Again, and this is recorded, so you can go back through it. You can pause and take a look at all the bullet points. And if you have any questions at all for me or for Kim personally, then please by all means reach out confidentially, and we're happy to hear your situation, your personal story, and how we might be able to help. So let me go ahead and move forward here. I'm big on quotes. Kim will tell you I'm constantly posting quotes around the office, and I thought that would be a good way to start here today. I've got a couple actually. So the first one is Richard Wagner. He's a German composer. He says, "Divorce is one of the most financially traumatic things you can go through. Money spent on getting mad or getting even is money wasted." I think that's certainly true. And the other one, as you let that sink in, is Louis C.K. He's a comedian. Divorce, he says, "The divorce is always good news." And I know that sounds really weird, but it's true, because no good marriage has ever ended in divorce. That would be sad. If 2 people are married and they just had this great thing and then they got divorced, that would be really sad. But that's happened 0 times. So I think as we all reflect on our relationships, whether we're married, divorced, remarried, thinking about getting divorced, perhaps, whether that's has anything or nothing to do with the pandemic that I don't want to say we've gone through as if it's past tense here, but we're going through. I think that what we have to do as we go through our lives is we always have to have our minds, or at least an eye on our planning, specifically as it pertains to financial planning. And so what I'd like to do here is I'd like to go through 3 sections, we'll call it, of tips, and I don't want to call them secrets, but certain things that I think that you should be aware of, or everyone should be aware of, when it comes to planning for a potential divorce, going through a divorce, and then of course what to do after you've been divorced, whether that's 6 months or 6 years after divorce. So let's go ahead and dive into it here. The first thing before you get divorced, the first thing you need to prepare yourself is the fact that it's going to be a marathon. Very few divorces end quickly and painlessly. And then for those of you who are on this webinar live right now, I'm sure you're nodding your head going, yeah, that's me. And if you're not, awesome, that's wonderful, obviously. But worst case scenario, if you prepare yourself for a marathon and you get a sprint, great. There's nothing wrong with that. But second of all, the second thing you need to do, and then there's I've got 2 slides or 2 pages of a list here, is getting organized. Now, whether you're the one initiating the divorce or you suspect that your partner might be initiating the divorce, the things that you need to start getting a list of is, first of all, your retirement accounts. So if you want to know what that means, that would be 401ks, 403bs, 457s, deferred comp plans, IRAs, Roth IRAs, SEP IRAs, simple IRAs, owner Ks. So there's all kinds of different types of retirement plans, and you almost need a checklist. And we're happy to provide you with one, by the way, but a checklist to make sure that if there is one, to have a record of it. And then if there isn't, you can at least check it or cross it off the list. Second would be pensions and executive benefit plans. And these are things like defined benefit plans if somebody has a pension that may be payable to a spouse later in life, cash balance plans. Some of the really popular ones around the country would be the TSP plan, which is the Thrift Savings Plan for the federal government, or FERS, Federal Employees Retirement System. And then right here in Central Ohio, or around the state, if you're a teacher, firefighter, sorry about that. If you're a teacher, firefighter, a police officer, then you would have either PERS, which is Public Employees Retirement System, SERS, which is State Employees Retirement System, or STRS, which is State Teachers Retirement System. So having a record of all those pensions that might be out there. Some other things that you need to have record of are things like brokerage accounts. These are individual accounts, joint accounts, custodial accounts for the kids, trust accounts, whether that's trusts from parents or trusts that you've started, transfer on death accounts, and things of that nature. Emergency accounts, pretty simple here, but this is things like checking, savings, money market, credit union accounts, CDs, savings bonds, and so on. Life insurance is a big one, even if it's employer paid. So employer paid life insurance by someone's job, personally owned life insurance, and life insurance types. There's lots of different types, but there could be universal life, variable universal life, term insurance. There's newer, what are called long-term care hybrid policies, which are both life insurance and long-term care kind of squashed together into one. And then the next would be real assets. And when I say real assets, these are things you can touch, feel, so when you think of real assets, think of your home, vacation homes, rental properties, timeshares, land, commercial property, physical gold, if you own any of that, silver, jewelry, collectibles, things of that nature. Moving on, just to be continued here, there's, like I said, this is a long list. Think of, don't forget about your liabilities, because it's not just assets that are important, it's liabilities that are important as well. So things like long-term debt obligations would be mortgages, home equity lines of credit, car loans, personal loans, and things of that nature. Revolving debt is really important. You want to make sure you have a tally of credit cards, lines of credit, and things of that nature. Copies of old tax returns. You want to make sure you have copies of old tax returns, because when you go through a divorce and we start talking about income, whether that pertains to child support or alimony potentially, income is important, obviously, as part of that equation. And you want to know which of your accounts are going to be liquid and accessible after the divorce intentions are announced, and so that you make sure you have enough to get by. You don't want to end up getting served divorce paperwork and the two of you are parting ways and moving into different homes, let's just say, and you've got $1,000 in the bank. That's no good, obviously. Another, some more pre-divorce planning tips would be, understanding your Social Security benefits. This is more important if you're older, but even when you're younger, many people don't know, and this is kind of a secret, that if you've been married for longer than 10 years, you can receive half of your spouse's, your ex-spouse's, Social Security benefits instead of your own, assuming obviously that half of theirs is larger than all of yours. And but you have to have been married 10 years. And it doesn't affect your spouse's Social Security at all. So if, let's just say, sometimes in amicable divorces, we'll have situations where, some couples might agree to wait until the 10th year is complete. So 11, and call it 9 years and 364 days. Let's wait for that last day, or wait a few months if we're close, just to ensure that this benefit takes place so that we can take care of each other. Again, understanding and reiterating here that it doesn't hurt either spouse's Social Security to take advantage of this benefit. Think twice about any joint financial decisions that you're going to be considering. So I'm sure we've all had stories of friends, or maybe even we've gone through a story like this ourselves, where we're considering buying a new house or an expensive car. I think sometimes, and I'm stepping out of my financial degree here into my psychology degree, but I think sometimes we think that some of these material possessions or things can make us feel better in our marriage, when in reality we're displacing our feelings off of the marriage issues and the emotional issues onto, well, if I get this brand new house and we'll be so much happier because we'll have this new house, or we'll be in this new neighborhood or new school system, or if I buy this new car, I'll be so much happier, when that's usually not the case. As you're planning for a divorce or potential divorce, it's important to apply for a credit card in your own name if you don't have one. A lot of the times people have joint credit cards, or and even if it's you're the primary and you have a joint owner being your spouse, it might make sense to have a separate, it might make sense, it would make sense for you to have a separate credit card that is all your own. Moving on to, so that's all pre-divorce planning. Moving on to what to do during the divorce. First of all, you got to stay on top of your finances. This is crucial. You got to pay attention to your credit card every single month. I wouldn't obsess about it necessarily speaking, unless there's a problem. In other words, I wouldn't be holding my phone with my Chase app on the front page, clicking on it 5 times a day to check my expenses. But make sure you're paying attention to your credit card, you're checking your savings accounts. Make sure both parties are being responsible here. And I think you can probably read between the lines. If we're going through a dissolution or amicable divorce, then no big deal. But there's always that chance that somebody might be spending something that we didn't agree on, let's just say. Remember, as you're going through this divorce, that any expenses that you make, especially those that go out into the future, subscriptions, commitments of any kind, that these expenses are going to be for 2 households as opposed to 1 going forward. So that leads me to probably rule number 1 as you start planning your finances, which is to build an emergency cushion or emergency account. And not to use rules of thumb, because I hate them, but I think we need them. A rule of thumb for how much emergency money you should have is roughly 6 months of your expenses. So if you take all your expenses that you're going to have on a monthly basis and you multiply that number times 6, then that's roughly how much you should have, if you're being conservative, sitting in a bank, savings, checking, money market account, just in case you need it for a rainy day. If you don't work, obviously, I would think that would be more like 12 months, by the way. So definitely want to point that out. You want to document everything, and any money that you spend that belongs to the both of you. It might need to be pointed out later as you go through the divorce. Another kind of not so well-known thought would be, talking to your HR department at work. Make sure you understand all the ramifications of divorce on your health insurance, your dental, your vision benefits, and make sure that how that's going to change, not only for yourself, but if you have children, how that's going to affect them. And then if you weren't a saver before, you need to become one. You need to reinvent yourself as a saver going forward. Now's not the time to, I can't remember what the name of the Queen Latifah movie was back a few years ago, but now's not the time to go celebrate your divorce with expensive purchases and big bar tabs. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of, letting yourself go, but this is the time to get your budget in check and really get organized and be disciplined. I mentioned getting your own credit card. I think you want to set up your own checking and savings accounts as well. Online access, set up online bill pay, get that all organized so that when it comes time to paying your bills, if you weren't the one paying the bills before, especially, that you've got all your accounts set up, you've got your bills set with the addresses they're supposed to go to, maybe even a spreadsheet with all of your bills and what you expect to spend per month, and have that down. If necessary, close any old accounts that were held in joint if your soon to be ex cannot be removed. So that's important. We want to get rid of those old accounts. And then this is a big one, huge. Revisit your financial plan. The number one thing that we see people in our office procrastinate on is their estate planning, which means getting their will, powers of attorney, healthcare directive, things like that updated, beneficiaries. But with the beneficiary note, the second most popular thing we see completely get kicked down the road and procrastinated on is people's financial plans. So everything that you were doing before the divorce that was joint with your family before is going to change, and it all needs to be completely retooled from scratch. So a lot of adjustments are probably going to be made between, well, when the divorce takes place and when it's complete, but even going forward, it's going to take more babysitting and just almost again, a reinvention of who you are as a saver and how you're going to make it going forward as a single parent. Women specifically, so this is to the men on the call. I don't mean to cut you out of the conversation here, but this is just at worthy.com. I saw this quote a while back and I just thought it was interesting. Worthy found that they did a survey, and they found that 95% of women do not use a financial advisor when going through a divorce, despite having the same kinds of financial goals that they want to achieve as their exes did, or soon to be exes. Women with children are more likely to want to stay in the home, than the home that they were living in before, after the divorce. But sometimes it just doesn't make any financial sense. So we have to think about these things unemotionally sometimes. And then lastly, women live longer. I mean, let's just face it. The life expectancy is a fact. It's a statistic, which means that women have to provide themselves with the income that they need to live the lifestyle that they desire for longer than men. So these are all reasons why revisiting that financial plan, or if you don't have a financial plan, obviously getting one set up and really being disciplined and putting that plan together. Because I think Teresa said something earlier that resonated with me, and that is, if you don't have a plan, or if then nobody, you've heard the cliche, nobody fails to plan, they plan, or nobody plans to fail, they fail to plan. But if you have a plan and you don't follow it, the plan's worthless. So we have to put a plan together. And if we don't have a plan, we don't have anything. We're just kind of, moving along and hoping we make it. And hope is not a strategy, obviously. And speaking of estate planning, one of the things we do for our clients that's relatively new and really spawned as a result of the downtime that we had during the initial onset of the coronavirus pandemic, when everybody was canceling their appointments. This is an initiative that I've always wanted to put together for I say always, for the past 3 years. And this is something we call a My Promise Kit. And this is something that once you get your estate planning documents in place, that it makes a lot of sense to have these things in place for your kids or for your heirs if you don't have kids. Once you're divorced, you got to have all your documents in order. That's everything from healthcare directive, powers of attorney, your title to your car, deed to the house, your life insurance statements, your investment statements, disability statements, anything that you have in your financial life, or we'll call it your financial house. We need to get that financial house in order. And what you should do is you should make sure you have all those things, including, medical history, surgical history, password organizer. Because if something, heaven forbid, happened to you, then how is somebody else going to step in and help you? Or if you become non-responsive, if you end up in a coma or something, heaven forbid, now somebody has to come in and be your POA and act on your behalf. And all of these things need to be organized in advance. I put redundancy with an exclamation point here, because not only should you have them in paper form and organized, but you should have them uploaded online someplace that's encrypted and safe, where they're available 24/7. And that's also something that we do for our clients. We call it the My Promise Vault. So let's talk a little bit and kind of close out with post-divorce planning tips. Easy for me to say. So once the divorce is over with, cancel all jointly held accounts. Get rid of all of them. Talk to your financial advisor about revisiting all the beneficiaries on all of your investment and life insurance, long-term care insurance, hybrids, all these insurance accounts, including the ones you have at work. They need to be changed and updated to so that if something happens to you, the money goes to who you want it to. sit down with your attorney, revisit your estate plan, make sure that your beneficiaries, your trustees, any other necessary changes are made. And this is a common thing we see. I want to reiterate that we've seen situations where people have been divorced for years, and then all of a sudden realized after the fact, oh man, I didn't update my estate plan, and if something happens to me, everything I have goes to my ex. So this is really, really crucially important here. Ensure same thing with your powers of attorney and healthcare directives. If you end up in a hospital bed and you're non-responsive, you don't want your ex to be the person who makes your healthcare decisions. Obviously, that I think that goes without saying. Some more tips here: revisit your property deeds, vehicle titles. Anything that's been held jointly, or many times titles or deeds are held what's called POD, payable on death, or TOD, which stands for transfer on death. But in either case, we need to make sure we have these things changed. Talk to your tax preparer, whether that's your enrolled agent, your CPA. Make sure they're aware of the change that's taken place, because obviously the way you file your tax return is going to be different going forward. If you're changing your name, you need to be sure to set up appointments with the Social Security Administration, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, banks, insurance agencies, and that includes your life insurance, home and auto, and so on. And with any companies that you have credit cards or lines of credit with, so you can change your name. And then just some final thoughts here. Don't be complacent. Just because an ex-spouse says they're going to do something doesn't mean they will. And I don't know if anybody's laughing now or giggling at the bare minimum, but some of you have probably been through situations where nothing went well, and nobody did anything they said they were going to do. So try not to, don't get too complacent. Even if things seem like they're going perfectly, stay on top of your game. But obviously at the risk of being combative, you don't want to be combative, right, Teresa? So, but stay on top of your game, stay on point, and don't get complacent. If your ex was supposed to reassign a portion of their life insurance death benefit, let's just say, to you or to the kids as part of the divorce decree, ask for a statement and make sure you see that it's been completed. If a loan is supposed to be paid by your ex after your divorce, make sure you're getting third-party statements. In other words, copies of statements mailed to you as a third party, and or both online account access, so you can check the account to make sure these payments are going through. The last thing you want is for the house that you live in that someone else is making payments on, for them to stop making payments. Obviously, that's no bueno. And this goes for cars too. If the car isn't paid for, it's going to get repossessed, right? So that only leaves you without transportation, but it also gets recorded as a debt cancellation in the eyes of the IRS in your name, which also is no good, right? And then lastly here, stay healthy. This has nothing to do with money, but it's important. Stay healthy. Going through a divorce is exhausting, both emotionally and physically. We've seen it happen, unfortunately, way too many times in 2 decades through our clients in our office. But, get lots of sleep, take care of yourself, eat good food, exercise here and there. Don't let the divorce take over your life. Don't try not to obsess. Spend time with your friends. Go on that morning walk every day. Make plenty of time for me time, which is, again, instrumental to success in going through a good, successful divorce. And then let the past go and try to focus on the future. The past really doesn't care about what we did, right? All that matters is what we do going forward. So that's my piece for the day. I hope you all learned something as a result of that. And again, I want to apologize for going so quickly through the information, but as promised, I wanted to make sure we were giving you, well, I don't want to say everything there is that's out there, but as much as I possibly could share in the time that I had here today. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. There's a lot of great information. So now we're going to open it up to you guys. We would love to hear what questions you have for us. So if you guys want to use the chat over there on the bottom, and feel free to ask any questions that you have for either Teresa or Adam. We'll give you guys a few minutes to type those in.
Yeah. And just one reminder, if you want it to be anonymous, use the Q&A. I guess the chat is actually showing names. So use the Q&A function if you want to be anonymous.
Okay, so I have one here. One coming through. What did you find to be the hardest part, Teresa, in creating a plan with your ex? Was there a certain step or?
Well, I think that actually just realizing I had to create a plan, and that's kind of funny because look, my career with corporate America was project manager. So planning was something I did every day. But it didn't occur to me that I should actually plan when it came to how to co-parent. So we fumbled along a little bit at first, and I kind of got lucky because I used that principle as the way to stay on track. But we made mistakes along the way. We did some specific things though. We decided on our living arrangement, and thank goodness we put a lot of conversation into that one, because just as Adam was saying, neither of us could afford to keep the home, even though I wanted to stay there desperately. It didn't make sense for me financially because I would have had to pay out enough to pay my ex's equity to buy his equity from him. So I guess that was probably the hardest decision to get to, was just moving past that. We also had to break down some things financially that were a little awkward. He owned a business and I had a 401k, which I had been contributing to for years, which he did not have. And so we had some conversation there. I wanted part of the business. Look, my name was actually the legal owner of it for tax purposes. And I said, well, I have a right to half of what the company's worth. And he said, well, good luck with that, because right now there's more debt than there is assets. So I was like, okay, well, that doesn't really help me at all. And I said, well, I worked every weekend for years on this 401k, putting it in there. But he reminded me, you wouldn't have been able to contribute as much had I not been bringing home income. So we had to work through some of those difficulties. Getting on the other side of that was probably the most difficult part for us. But fortunately, we shared common values. So we didn't have to fight about, well, I think this is right and you think that's not right. And, so we were on the same page there, fortunately for us.
Great. Thank you, Teresa.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have another question. So what advice would you give to somebody who's getting pushback from their ex when you're trying to create a plan? So you've decided, we need to plan for co-parenting, and either they're not on board or they're giving you pushback. What advice would you give to somebody in that situation?
This is perfect. I'd say go right to the first C in the 4 C's and ask them, are they ready to choose to be a good parent? Ask them very directly, have a deliberate conversation. Say, look, we don't need to get along. We simply need to choose to be good parents to our child. We're not divorcing him or her. We're divorcing each other. And moving forward with that, if you get an affirmative, yes, I want to be a good parent, which hopefully you do, then you take the next step and say, okay, then let's make a plan on how we'll do that. And if you need help, there are people out there that help you that can facilitate the two of you to plan. I do it. There are mediators that work in family law offices that can help with that sort of thing. So don't hesitate to reach out for help if the two of you aren't able to get on the same page. But I think that first step is asking your co-parent simply to make the commitment and confirm for you, yes, I want to be a good parent.
Great, thank you. And then we have one more question. How long do you think did it take getting from that point, choosing to be a good parent, to feeling like you guys were in a good place in your plan? It was working.
Sure. For us, I think we were maybe atypical, getting there kind of quickly. And it was maybe 6 months before it started to become kind of like, yeah, we accept this. And I wouldn't suggest that that's how it is for everyone. If you'll recall my story about me getting along with my fiance's ex-spouse, and that was me being a step parent, basically, and getting along with the parent on the other side of the equation, that was 10 years. So it kind of depends on where you start and when do you take action to correct course. The sooner you take that action, the more likely you can get there more quickly.
I have a piggyback question on that, Teresa. So I'm curious, if you knew then what you know now, do you feel like that 10 years could have been shrunk?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and here's the thing. So if I would have just applied, Adam, what I had already applied to work on my relationship with my ex to the step parent scenario, that could have been accelerated quite a bit and really avoided missing out on a lot of the younger years of building those relationships with those kids. So, the good news is I finally got there, but I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you why I didn't think of that sooner. Sometimes it's just when, you're ready, the time comes and you take the action you're supposed to.
It doesn't look like we have any more questions, but I'm curious if you would speak to the 3 comments we had earlier today when we first started about whether that's coexisting with all the adults involved, co-parenting in different counties, which that one raised my eyebrows. That would be tough. And then trying to find ways to work together, even though, households are run completely different. And I imagine that's probably wouldn't surprise me if that were part of the reason the divorce took place in the first place, right? If the
Sure.
the households are completely run differently. Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, so let's see if I look back at the chat here. Yeah, coexisting with all the adults involved, I'd say maybe take the time to look into those apps that I mentioned so that you have a tool to help coordinate through. You can share your calendar on there, you can share your communications on there, and kind of everybody can be on the same page that way. I would say a tool could really help in that scenario. Co-parenting from different counties, I think that if you're newly divorcing, then you hopefully have engaged some legal counsel and you can ask them to help you understand what the differences are between these counties in terms of legal issues and whatnot. If you're years removed from it, then you may have to do some research on your own if you don't want to re-engage legal counsel. I'm not sure exactly what the different counties scenario that's causing the trouble is. If it's simply how far away you live. I don't think we're trees, so we can get up and move if we want to move closer. If that really resolves your scenario, that's another possibility, right? And then what was the third one? Wanting to find ways to work together, even though houses run differently. Well, I'll tell you something that a therapist told me. Yes, I did go for therapy, and I would encourage you to do that if you're newly divorced, because it helps to give you the right center of where you're putting your focus. And I was obsessing about, new people coming into my son's life and what could I do about that? And I was a control freak. So what was I going to do if I couldn't control everything in the other home? And my therapist asked me, Teresa, do you think he's a good parent? Now, mind you, my answer to that was yes. And I was able to say that emphatically. Not everyone is going to be in that place, but for me, once she asked me that, and I could say, and we weren't talking, was he a good spouse? She simply asked me, is he a good parent? And I said, absolutely. She said, then you're going to have to trust that he will make good parenting decisions in his home. It's not your home and you don't get to decide, nor can he tell you what to do in your home. Hopefully you share common values so that you can understand, you share a common definition of what's right and wrong, at least. It's going to be hard if you don't share that.
All right. Thank you. So it looks like that's all the questions that we have for today. So thank you to all of you that attended today. We're very happy that you were able to make some time for the Happily Divorced and 4 C's of Collaborative Co-Parenting webinar today. And thank you, Adam and Teresa, for your information today. All right, everybody have a great night. And again, the link will go out so you guys can, like we said, rewatch or share the video with family and friends if you would like to.
Right. Thanks so much, everyone.
Right.
Have a good night.
Very much.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Seen this life before, let's face it. your own version of love, I'll take it. There's a part of you that tells me so. The truth is that